Hello to you out there. Today, you're going to listen to a couple of boy geniuses talk about Boy Genius. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Cory.
And this week, we are going to be discussing Boygenius-The Record. We really wanted to do a post-Grammys episode, and this was one of the most nominated albums this year, in between just the album itself and some of the individual songs on it, and we ended up picking a good one. This group did quite well at the Grammys, actually. They walked away with 3 awards over the course of the evening. They were all, none of them were televised, actually, their awards, because the rock categories, I guess, don't get the ratings that they would have in the past, but it's pretty impressive that they did it, and they beat some heavyweights. If you've been listening to us for a while, we discussed the most recent album from the Foo Fighters, which of course got some nominations, and we figured that's a shoo-in. They always win. It's a strong record, but no, this was a woman's world at the Grammys this year.
I heard that.
Yeah.
People slept on that album. I don't care what anybody says. But,
well, yeah, they did. And but yeah, that brings us to our question. Is it worth it? Are these awards deserved? That's the Grammys say it's about quality, so that's always the question with the Grammys. Is it worthy?
I'll tell you, not getting ahead, but I think they got, in my opinion, I think they got snubbed on Best Production Non-Classical because this album is produced very well.
That's what, yeah, I don't disagree with that. As for the other stuff, we're going to get into it.
We're going to get into it.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily a knock against Boy Genius. It was a stacked year. Some classic heavyweights like your Foo Fighters, Rolling Stones, Metallica, and then other current people, more somewhat recent, like your Paramore and Lana Del Rey. So very stacked year. So we're not necessarily shading this group as of now.
It was cool to see Paramore get some flowers there. First female lead to win that award. That was cool.
Yes, first female-led group to win the award.
I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but it was a women's world.
Yeah.
It wasn't stuffed down your throat, though, I don't feel like, because I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, Trevor Noah did make it clear to us, but it wasn't bad. And well, he's a good host. I really actually appreciated his hosting after seeing the Golden Globes a couple weeks ago, and with Joe Coy, that was really bad. It definitely shows that it's not an easy job to do, hosting an awards show. And Trevor Noah kept it moving along very nicely, like he has for the past few years.
He did indeed. This was like a blind pick almost for us. I'm not afraid to say that. I didn't know much about these ladies or about this group. I thought this was the first record they had done and found out that it wasn't.
No, it was not. I'd heard of this group. I'd heard they were really acclaimed. The only one I really had familiarity with at all was really Phoebe Bridgers, and that was just because she was one of the openers on the Eras Tour show that I went to. And she even did a song from this album during that performance. But that was really the extent of it. I enjoyed her performance just fine, but then, yeah, I wasn't there for her. We all know I wasn't there for her. So it's hard to put yourself out there and get up to the level of the headliner in that case. So she had her fans there at the show. There were people very excited for her in addition to Taylor. Not everybody there knew her, but a sizable amount of people did. And that's no small feat in a football stadium.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially in front of Taylor.
Yeah, that's really the big thing. But I didn't even see her whole set. That was my beer time because I knew Taylor was going to be on for like 3.5 hours. So I needed the... Yeah, but anyway, some background on what Boy Genius is. So it is a super group of free singer-songwriters, Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridgers, and Lucy Dacus. They're all some of the alt-rock indie songwriters of this moment. You're not going to hear their songs on the radio probably, but they have pretty sizable fan bases, which is very possible in this day and age of streaming and the internet. And the ladies, they go back to, as a group, they go back to 2018. They'd become friends before that, went on a tour together, thought they'd just do one song, but they ended up doing a whole EP in 2018. And since then, they've collaborated with each other and other artists and raised their profiles a lot since 2018. But they finally got together to record a full album this year, and the album is just called The Record.
I like it. I like that people were waiting for it from what I was reading, and then they just say, yep, The Record. it's perfectly placed. I enjoy that.
Yeah. And the rumors were getting started because they'd begun performing live together. They played Coachella last year. By the way, I can't wait for the No Doubt reunion performance at Coachella. I won't be there, but I will be streaming it.
Yeah, they'll stream that. That'll be cool.
That's a different discussion. So, yeah, and it began last year, January. They had a film released of 3 music videos that were interconnected and directed by Kristen Stewart, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they just kind of went out, did it. It was released at the end of March of last year. Very quick critical acclaim, one of the year's best reviewed albums, which makes the Grammy nominations not a surprise. And commercially, it did all right too. It made it to number 4 on the Billboard 200 and topped the charts in Ireland, Scotland, and the UK. Group of women rockers.
It was the first time for all 3 of them to have a number 1 charting album, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is amazing.
This was their moment, but we did pick an interesting time too, because right before the Grammys, they announced they were going on a indefinite hiatus.
Wow. Okay.
But they're solo artists. They'll regroup when it's ready, when they're ready to.
When they're playing live, and I didn't get a chance to see video of their live performances, and on the liner notes, on searching throughout, it's very tough to figure out who's doing what, because everybody's just listed as performance. Who is doing what, though, as far as the girls go on stage? Do you know? Are any of them playing the drums, or are any of them?
I don't believe so, no. I think the instrument of choice for these ladies is the guitar.
I thought so.
And Julian Baker seems to be the most prominent guitarist.
Heard.
So there's that. I haven't seen them live. The closest I got was just Phoebe Bridgers, and she played the guitar, but she had a whole backing band with her. So yeah, it's definitely not a trio here, just contributing to this. That's for sure.
It's a beautiful, beautiful bringing of musicians here, and I'm glad we picked this one. I'm not putting the cart in front of the horse, but I got smiles on this one.
Yeah, I could say that I got some as well. But we'll just So anyway, Grammys, which is why we're here talking about it today. So as I said, Boygenius won 3 awards, and one of them was Best Alternative Music Album, which was won by The Record. And it seems to be pretty accepted. Obviously, there are some disappointed it won over Lana Del Rey. We'll find out if we agree or not with that.
Have you listened to that album, the Lana Del Rey, all the way through?
I have, yeah. It's been a while since I have. We'll see. We're going to get into it. And one of the songs won a couple awards, but we'll discuss those when we get to that particular tune.
Yeah. All right, I'll save it for that.
Yeah, we're going to save it for that. We are going to save it for that. And I'm ready to dive into this. Let's get it done.
Let's get at it.
All right, so the record begins with a song called Without You, Without Them. This really reminded me of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's song title, Within You, Without You. That's what the title did, but it's not like that. It's an a cappella intro about family. Really strong harmonies here. We don't actually get quite as many of them as you might think after hearing this, which, spoiler alert, I think is a bit of a disappointment and misleading.
Ooh, hot tea take.
Yeah, there's going to be a few this episode from me.
Like we're
hot tea takes.
Good conversations. I'm on the other side on that one, but I want to hear what you got to say here.
Yeah, I like the harmonies. I just wish there were more of them. But it's a brief intro to the album, but it is strong. And yeah, I think it sets our tone for this very well. And it was primarily written by Lucy Dacus. The first 4 songs on this album were independently written, with contributions later added. All of the members of the group are listed as writers on every song now,
which I like. It seems like a communal sharing as far as everybody on this album. I like that. But tone setter is exactly where I was going for. I think this does set a great tone. I don't know if I would say it's misleading, but it does open us on a different foot than we'll see in a lot of the album. It has a purpose here. And again, cart in front of the horse. But at this point, as a first-time listener, I don't understand the purpose, but this is so strong and beautiful that it doesn't throw me for a loop like, oh my gosh, what's this album? Which I liked. Because sometimes you can get that first track that wants to be avant-garde and or just like a wild a cappella thing, and it can fall flat. This one sticks the landing coming into this album. I'm interested throughout this whole intro, and I'm excited to see. And then we go to track 2, and like I said, it's on a different foot. So it's a cool opener.
Yeah, it definitely is on a different foot. Track 2 is called $20, primarily a showcase for Julian Baker. Has some protest vibes to it. Pitchfork even noted that Julian Baker rallied against George W. Bush at the age of 10, so she's always had a bit of activist in her. So, and this is definitely in that wheelhouse. I think this is a solid rocker. It definitely showcases her guitar playing very well. And I like the overlapping vocals on this one. I think this is a good, true first song. The first track was really an intro. This is really the first song here, and I think it gets things off to a pretty solid start.
Yeah, it definitely does. I love the vibe that comes right out of this a cappella, and here we are in this wild time signature, overlapping vocals, almost conversation like at points. I'm going to get into the wild cacophony of sounds that are hidden in production, not even hidden, but sprinkled in production, that I think really elevate a lot of these songs. And in this case, these electronic vibes that are flowing throughout the back of this composition are really cool. I love the line, "We play with fire in another life, we were arsonists." I love that. It's again, we talk about setting a tone in the first as an intro, but you're right, this first true track really lets us know who they are. Get a little piece of writing. I think pretty strong narrative storytelling style that we'll see throughout this album. A good track. $20. I'm on. Again, I'll go back to first time listener because we were talking about this being a blind, but first time I'm still on. I'm actually getting more excited now because it's a sound, and I'm gonna touch on this a bunch going through, but there's a real familiarity in all of their sounds, in my opinion. But it's not like they're just repeating a sound, but there's familiar pieces throughout here. And this one has a lot of them, and I dig it.
Yeah, most definitely. This song does have it's fresh yet familiar at the same time.
Yes.
Which the best songs here absolutely do. And I think we continue that with the next song, which is a different vibe, but it showcases another facet of this group and another member, in this case, Phoebe Bridgers with Emily, I'm Sorry. Pitchfork in their review noted that this was likely based on a defamation lawsuit filed against Phoebe Bridgers by a former record producer of hers named Chris Nelson. Phoebe Bridgers had sexual relations with both Chris Nelson and his girlfriend at the time. Now, Chris Nelson and his girlfriend ended up breaking up, but his girlfriend did continue a relationship with Bridgers, and Phoebe's pretty outspoken online. She did post about it, and he filed a suit. It ended up being dismissed, but it seems to be based on a messy situation, and that's why she's apologizing to this Emily. I really enjoy this song. I think this is true confessional songwriting. Like, this is a flawed narrator, but she's owning up to those flaws. And I know this is definitely the vibe of this record's very much sisterhood and solidarity, and they probably don't want me to compare each other, but sometimes it's inevitable, and I have to say, out of these women, I do like Phoebe Bridgers' voice the best. I think she has the most unique tone, and it just carries a bit more weight with her words. I will say that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I really do. This track, though, here we are on track 3, and we get another side of this band. And again, as a first-time listener, I'm not put off by it. We're sitting inside now like an ethereal sound, a real dreamlike piece composition-wise, and I dig it. And it really excited me going into this and being like, wow, I've seen 2-3 facets of their musicality by now, and I'm not thrown off at all. This album really, at this point, is still flowing for me. I enjoy this one.
Yeah, it is definitely not a coincidence that these 2 songs were put as part of the film with videos to interconnect, because they flow so well together, and that continues when it comes to the film with the next track, which is True Blue, not a Madonna cover. This is a Lucy Dacus showcase. It's kind of weird seeing her with them because she's so much taller than her bandmates. I don't know if you've saw the picture of them at the Grammys. Like, she's so tall in comparison to her bandmates. It's wild. But yeah, this is a love song here. Pretty downbeat still. This might be a hot tea take. I'm not crazy about this song. I really think that it suffers in part after coming after the previous song, which was a favorite of mine. But it's not just because of placement. I don't feel this True Blue really goes anywhere musically or lyrically. It just kind of stays in the same place for me. And I would have preferred a Madonna cover to this because it just exists. This might be the gun to the head for me for least favorite.
We're firing on all cylinders together so far on this album. I love this acoustic start here. I like this composition. I really like this composition because the naked drum really works in this, and I dig how they get that going. But for me, by the middle of this song, for the first time here, I feel like it's more of like a repeated sound. It doesn't go anywhere. Just like you said, it's weird to say because the first 3 tracks have been so unique and so original, but this one, it just falls flat. In my first listen notes, I have maybe another spot on the album because it was coming off of Emily, and that was super strong. But I don't know if I can find another spot for this to actually hit. And I'm with you. This is the first falter, maybe the last, but not to do any spoilers. But for me, this is the first slip in the album.
Well, we'll see if we're on the same page about that. But before we do that, while you're listening, please do us a favor and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it, whether that be Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Amazon. We're on all of them. Also, leave us a nice rating and review. That would be much appreciated. And of course, follow us on social media. All those links are in the episode description. And now, on with the rest of this album. We're a third of the way through already. Yeah, because now we're on to track 5, which is Cool About It. Paul Simon is listed as a songwriter on this because This track interpolates The Boxer, one of his high points with Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah, it's a breakup tune where these all of the singers trade verses. Yeah, the fact that it's these different perspectives, maybe it's the vibe they're going for. I do think there's a bit of disjointedness within it because of that, at least storytelling wise. And it would be okay if I felt that the parts were equal. Unfortunately, here, I don't think they are. I think that the last verse from Phoebe Bridgers just demolishes the other two. That's the one that sticks with me through the song. Musically, it's very pretty to listen to. I mean, they're taking from a great melody to begin with, which is helpful, but I'm not sure this song is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's a hot tea take, because I know this is a very beloved song on the album.
It is a hot tea take for me. I mean, we get this finger picking right off the jam. I immediately heard The Boxer. I'm so happy. One, that I'm not just as crazy as I think I am, but two, that I saw them shout out to Paul Simon in the liner notes and in the credits for this, which is great, because The Boxer's there. Say it and be proud to say thank you, Paul. It's definitely a jammer, man. I'm with you on the Phoebe Bridgers thing, because it was the first time where I differentiated like her sound on this album. I was like, it's a strong sound. She's a strong, unique voice, and I dig it. But I don't feel that disjointedness that you feel on this one. I feel it flows very seamlessly. It immediately, I think even without the Boxer musical reference, it would have sang true to a Simon and Garfunkel kind of sound. But it's a relaxing tune. I know I needed it here on this album after True Blue, and it shines more, maybe more so because of that. But I'm enjoying it again more so because it is another sound. This is the fourth sound on this album, and it did, for me, I think it was a really cohesive piece, especially as a composition musically. I'm all about this one. This one has straight up made it into my playlist.
Yeah, you are more than cool about it, is what you're saying.
Way more than cool about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ice cold about this one.
Ice cold. All righty. All right, but is that ice cold enough for you to be not strong enough, which is our next song. Track number 6, the Boygenius said this was inspired by Sheryl Crow and her song Strong Enough, which makes sense what you hear, because the hook is not strong enough to be your man, and Sheryl asked, are you strong enough to be my man?
I like that. I didn't put the two and two together.
I looked that up. I had to see that. I thought, but it's a very cool reference. Of course, we love Sheryl Crow here. If you haven't listened to our Sheryl Crow episode, you should do that. Come on. That does not have strong enough on it, but it's still Sheryl Crow. So, but that's where it ends here. It is a lot more up-tempo than that song. I really do feel that the band is clicking on all levels here, and I kind of love that they're just kind of playing around with convention by saying, they're not strong enough to be your man. Like, they're doing that, but it's within this real classic rock kind of inspired sound. And this song in particular was a single. It's been singled out as the highlight of the album, and I can definitely see that. I really think they're clicking on all cylinders here. And this song was nominated for 3 Grammys, and it won for both Best Rock Song and Best Rock Performance, even beating out the Foo Fighters. But I'm not mad about it. I do think this is a really strong track, and I think it's one that will stand the test of time.
Super strong. It's strong enough for me. I'm with you. I'm so glad you said it. I'm with you on the storytelling. For me, I was thinking 90s, maybe early 2000s indie rock storytelling, but still, like, it harkens back to a real rock way to tell a story, and I dig that. Always an angel, never a god. Ooh, I love it, man. You know, a play on always a bridesmaid, never a bride, but in the most, I'll say highest, and no pun intended, but the highest honor inside of it. It's a really neat play. I think it fit well. I'm with you. All cylinders. It is a kick-ass, super strong jam. I don't know, man. Does it beat out the Foo? That was a tough one for me. But it's definitely a highlight of this album, if not the highlight.
Yep, that's a very fair point. I don't think there's much to disagree on with it being at least a highlight of this. Definitely strong enough to do that, unlike what the title says. But now we're going to move on to, I guess if you're listening to the vinyl, you'd be flipping the album over now with track number 7, which is Revolution Zero. This is not Beatles influenced, actually, like you might have expected based on the references of the previous two songs. But this is a Phoebe Bridgers lead vocal about generational apathy. I connect with. I feel like it's just, she's only a few years older than me. And it just is, again, just this feeling of resignation and wanting to give up that's really present in these lyrics. And they cut through, but they have a sense of humor about them, too. I mean, I don't want to die. That's a lie, but I'm afraid to get sick. It's like, yes, you're speaking you're dropping some truth bombs here, but you've got a sense of humor about it. And I really appreciate that about this tune. This is one of the best here for me.
Super strong. Coming at number 7, especially after what we've seen on this album, especially coming out of Not Strong Enough, there was a propensity to have a flat song here, and we have the opposite. Even though it still sits for me in this ethereal, dreamlike sort of state here, it sings strong all the way through. It's amazing. A really, really well done song. I have to say, I'm a little surprised not to see, if you're going to call out, which I just learned, Cheryl and Paul, call the Beatles out on this, because you use the strings in a very similar way. The almost reverse tape sound that this song goes out on was very reminiscent of the Beatles for me. I thought it was a straight line. Honestly, I enjoyed that about this album. When I talk about this familiar place, this familiar sound, even with the different facets of their musicality that we see throughout this album, there are direct lines to things we know. We talk about the subconscious listener. This hits subconscious listener for me in a million ways.
Yeah, I can definitely hear what you're saying there. But it's funny that's not a direct reference, because the next song, well, its title is a reference. Track number 8 is called Leonard Cohen. He's listed as a co-writer along with Ho Jun Yu, who I've never heard of before. I do like the Leonard Cohen reference here. I do like I'm not an old man writing horny poetry. I thought that was a clever line there. But other than that, this doesn't leave much of an impression, because it doesn't allow itself to. It's more of an interlude than a song. It's under 2 minutes, and it just is kind of there for me. And that's a shame, because I think there is a song in here if it had been thought out a bit more. So I think this was a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
I'm on the other side on this one. You know what? I didn't realize how short it was till you just said it, and I've listened to it a bunch. It's a very basic sound here, but for me, I feel like the song is elevated by the lyrics. If you're going to do a Leonard Cohen and call it Leonard Cohen and have the anthem in here, then you got to do a strong singer storyteller jam, and I feel like that's what we have here. I'm really surprised to see that it's 1:42. This song, I don't know. Maybe it's this familiar beautifulness that I fall upon on this album, but I really enjoy this track.
Okay, 2 sides of the same coin there. Oh, but we are going to we're going to follow a short song with one of the longer songs here, which is Satanist. This is a rocker that Julian Baker wrote after watching a documentary called Hail Satan, and it's kind of just about asking a friend to go to extremes with you, like, will you be an anarchist with me? Will you be a nihilist with me? The second half goes into a moodier feel for sure. Definitely distinct parts. I do prefer the first rockier half. It's a cool enough song. It's not one of my favorites here, but it's fine. It's there.
I love this song, man.
Oh man.
This has Weezer verve pipe feel to it.
Really?
Oh my gosh, most definitely with that down strum. Doom, 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 doom. Oh man, I jam on this. I, I really do. I love this sound, especially for what she's saying inside of it. It makes sense. I won't say that we got another side because we hear a little bit of this earlier on in the album, but I really enjoy this song, man.
I mean, maybe that's
I'm
my issue.
surprised.
We did already hear it.
Yeah, we have heard a little bit of it, but I don't feel like it's like a repeated sound. You know, it stands on its own. I was surprised that this wasn't a single. You know, True Blue was a single, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. For me, this is a single way over True Blue.
Well, they had to give, I guess they wanted to give each of the writers their own single, is my guess with that. And
okay, all right.
But well, speaking of Lucy Dacus, we're gonna distill that a bit more, I think, with our next song, which is We're in Love. This is a song about the bond between the band, actually, and pretty spare musically, some light orchestration, mostly piano based. Baker actually didn't want to include this song, but she came around to it. And I think it's a nice sentiment of a song, but it really drags. It's almost 5 minutes long and doesn't really go anywhere musically or vocally. And I mentioned the thing about each writer getting their own single, and I think that they're unfortunately, hot tea take, I think Lucy Dacus is the weakest link of this chain. I do not enjoy her contributions as much as I do the other two members, and I think that her voice, it's pretty, but it's not really memorable. It doesn't hit me. I don't connect with it. And Rolling Stone noted that the on and on and on and on line at the end was a reference to Taylor Swift's This Love from the 1989 album. If you haven't listened to our episode on that, please do. And I didn't even pick up on that. I had to read that. And to me, that's a bit of a problem because that's a song from my favorite Taylor Swift album. I gave that album an A+ when we did it. And I didn't even notice it. And honestly, hot tea take, if that doesn't say that this is a boring song, I don't know what does.
Follow your gut. Follow your gut. If you didn't want to put this on the album, don't. Because unfortunately for me, the only reason I can figure out why it's on the album is because they wanted a little bit of a gap between Satanist and Anti-Curse and musically. That's all I could come up with. This is my gun to the head. It falls flat. It falls flat, especially where it's placed on the album. If it was used as a mellow out gap here, I understand, I guess, but this one, man, I was very surprised at this point in the album, having so much fun. I was very surprised how it doesn't really fit the album, because the album is so beautifully produced and on point, and everything feels thought out. And I don't know, man. It's sad. I hate to do that on any song, but I have nothing good to say about this one. Yeah. I really don't. And you know me, I try to get the silver lining playbook, but not for this one.
I agree. I'm glad you agreed with me on this song, at least, because this was not it.
Yeah, Rolling Stone. We'll talk about Rolling Stone at the end of this album too, because I got a bone to pick with them, or maybe just a couple questions for them as far as, and you know, the Taylor reference. If it really is, there's no way that anybody's going to hear it because this song falls so flat. So it's wasted if it is.
It probably was. If Phoebe's pals with her, it probably was.
You know what I say? If you think long, you think wrong. Follow your gut. If you have to come around to putting a song on an album, then it doesn't go on the album.
Yeah, I agree with that. And sometimes there are great songs left on the cutting room floor, but they're just not appropriate for that time. I think we've seen that just on this show, even when covering Taylor's re-recorded albums. There's some strong vault tracks, but they just didn't work the first time around, but we got them now. And I think you're correct. If you have to second guess it, follow your gut. If somebody's saying, no, this isn't it, move on.
Yep.
Move on. But fortunately, even though it's a plodding tune, it is eventually over. And we move on to Anti-Curse, which was inspired by a time that Julian Baker almost drowned at a Malibu beach. And she said, thinking about it, wasn't a terrible way to die because she was out having fun with her friends, at least. Like, she was living her life while dying. So live like you were dying, I guess you could say, even though that's a totally different genre than this.
There you go.
I think it's a decent penultimate track. I really like the story behind it. I do think it's more mellow than the other more guitar heavy Julian Baker lead vocal songs here. But I think that it works for this point in the album. I think this is a good penultimate track.
It really does. It fits its spot. It does its job perfectly here, right before the end. I love the way it builds. It gives a nice cinematic build. I love the drums in this song. It's a good song. It's not a great song, but it's a good song that on this album is made great because of its placement and what it does in the album. It really worked out here.
Most definitely it worked out. And now we're at the end with track number 12, which is Letter to an Old Poet, a Bridger's lead vocal. And the title's a reference to a book called Letters to a Young Poet by Maria Wilk. Lucy Dacus said that that book was an inspiration for the group. It's another song about the group's bond, and I think it's a good album closer. It's a bit short. I do think it ends a bit too abruptly. That's my only real major critique of the song. But other than that, I do think that, and I think it's a much better example of showcasing this group's bond than Where in Love was, if we're going to be doing that. I do think it's just a bit more interesting musically than that song.
Most definitely. It not only does it do a great job in summing up and referencing this bond and showing it, but for me, it's a really nice bow right on the top, of this album. It really sums up the whole entire album. You get a lot of the sounds we heard before, and Phoebe drives it home. It's a neat closer. It does well here. It really does its job as a closer.
Yeah, most definitely. And there we have it. Boygenius-The Record. A multiple Grammy winner and even more nominations, including for Album of the Year. And it worked out that we did that because we did end up covering the Album of the Year already. So we did that a while ago.
Yeah.
So, there we have it. What we both went in pretty blind to this one. And with that being said, I know we're going to have different grades, but let's hear yours first.
I really enjoyed this album. I enjoyed it as a first-time listener. I enjoyed it throughout multiple listens to the album. It is paced correctly for me. There are two spots where I feel like this should be a 10-track album, in all honesty. For me, if you leave out True Blue and We're in Love, I think it still runs its course without a pacing misstep, and I think it really is very solid. But unfortunately, it has those two missteps on them. I can't say enough good things about the production. I can't say enough great things about the way they put their music together and really give us different looks at all types of musicality. And for that, I'm going to give this a strong B. Almost a B+, but a strong B.
Yeah, for me, I definitely agree with you about those two songs. And there were some songs here that I think they were good, but not great, or they were just this close to getting to above average for me. that there was stuff here that I really vibed with and connected with lyrically. There was some other stuff that just didn't quite stick the landing like I wanted it to. And I did try by listening to this multiple times throughout the week. So I know that a lot of people love this album, but I did give it a chance. I didn't quite connect with it the way I was expecting and wanted to. And for that, I'm going to give it a C.
Heard that. Now let's talk about our boys Rolling Stones and DIY giving this album a perfect 5-star score.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed this album, but that's a very, very high standard that, as you know, a listener and someone who enjoys Rolling Stone, that's an accolade that goes to perfect albums. And I was very, very surprised when I found out that.
Yeah, and I know that it's a monumental release. These are free women who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. It is groundbreaking that something like this has gotten so much recognition, and that's incredible for representation. And these are all talented songwriters, but I just don't think that, again, the sum is always not greater than its parts. And this is not a perfect album.
Sure.
There's some missteps here. I'm not quite sure why they said that. I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah. Grammy edition Hot Tea takes Does It Belong in Album of the Year?
So I didn't hear every album of the year released this year, or even admittedly of the nominations. I probably should have. I'm going to say personally, no.
I think it's strong enough to be in there. Again, I've listened to not all of them, but most of the albums, and I think it maybe can. It's a very strong album. It's not a weak album in any right. I think it can make it in there. I mean, do you think it beats Midnight's?
No.
And not in a biased way, as an album to album. Like last year, we had a tough call. You know, we're talking Beyonce and Taylor, and we it was a great conversation, but I feel like this one, unfortunately, no conversation, no contest.
Yeah, I didn't feel it was a contest this year, and there are some out there who feel Midnight's didn't really deserve it. They think that she has better albums, and it just wasn't as strong, and they liked other choices better, which that's fair. Those other things have their merits too, but Midnight's is a true concept album, and it only grew on me since we did it on the show. I know when we did it on the show, I only gave it a B overall, but my opinions changed since then and going back and listening to it, because there's so much going on in the songs. So I do think that it was the right decision. I was happy to hear that it won. I think she absolutely deserved it. And she announced another album coming out in April now, The Tortured Poets Department. You know, we'll be discussing that when it comes out.
That's definitely.
Yeah, but we're not there yet. But as for, I don't disagree with the song not strong enough winning awards. As for the album itself, I do wish Lana Del Rey had won. I didn't like Ocean Boulevard as much as Norman fucking Rockwell, but there aren't many albums I like as much as Norman fucking Rockwell.
True.
In fairness to that, but I do think, again, Lana's a true artist. She knows her craft, and there were some career heights on that album. And maybe one day we will discuss it here. I do think there's a lot to dive into, but she's just such a strong writer. And I mean, maybe this is a hot tea take. I don't think any of the members of Boygenius are on that writing level, at least not yet. But then again, Lana's had time to perfect her craft. She's been doing it longer. She's older than them. So maybe that's not a fair comparison, but if we're going to be in this category here, I don't think that the right choice was made, and it's pretty absurd that Lana Del Rey's first Grammy win is actually just being a part of Midnight's because she was featured on Snow at the Beach. That's not great in my opinion, but she's gonna do a lot more, I'm sure, and she will get her flowers. But Joni Mitchell got her flowers too with her Best Folk album. I was happy about that, and she performed, and that's a legend right there. But yeah, that's the Grammys tea. And I'm happy Miley won for Flowers too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought her performance was incredible.
It was incredible, but it was a tiny bit too much. I love her. She over gravelled in places. That's my feelings on that hot tea take. I love her. She's getting a little carried away with Flowers these days, in my opinion.
But what do you expect from Miley?
Agreed. I
mean, my boss even texted me like, I really like Miley, even though she's a little tacky. And it's like, yeah, she is, but that's Miley.
It's true. It's true.
I think we were pulling for her. We did do an Endless Summer Vacation episode when that came out. So we wanted her to get her flowers, and she did.
Agreed.
Agreed. But now the Grammys are over, and up next is before we do that, favorite songs. We have to do our favorite song.
Oh yeah, Satanist all the way.
I'm gonna go with Emily, I'm Sorry.
Good song.
Yeah.
Good song.
Yeah, those are
Cool
favorites.
About It almost won out for me, but Satanist all the way.
Yeah, those are our favorites. So
yeah, man.
All right, but yeah, so yeah, Grammys are over, and now the Super Bowl is coming up, and yes, it's football, but we've got a pretty iconic halftime performer this year, the one and only Usher, one of the defining artists of this century, for sure. Really hard to imagine a world without his songs in it, and he's going to have the longest halftime show ever, actually. He bargained for more time, and he has the hits to deserve it, and we're going to be covering some of those hits afterwards with our coverage of his 2004 album Confessions, turning 20 this year. A blockbuster of an album for sure, one of the biggest of my lifetime, and I'm pretty excited. I'm excited to discuss it. There's some great stuff there, and especially after the Super Bowl, I'm really excited to see him perform.
I'm excited in both ways as well. See him perform and go back to revisit this album. It's been a while since I listened to this one.
Yeah, me too, but it'll be a treat, I'm sure. So, yes. But yeah, thank you for coming in with us on this one, of course. And we will be here to reveal our confessions next week. Until then, take care of yourselves.